Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to introduce you to Tennyson here. I've got Luke and Tess.
Hello.
And,
Hi.
yeah, these guys are the future of music. That's the first thing I thought when I first heard your music. And I think to start out, I'd like to tell a few anecdotes of how I first met you a couple years ago. So, start out with Tess. Tess and I were working on a song late at night, and we had with a great singer named Musina and Ali Shahid Muhammad. And I played a rough version of the song, and Tess said to me, first we had Ali said, "Yeah, I think it's coming along, it's going okay." And Tess says, "I think it sounds like shit." And that told me that you were a great person who spoke your mind and told me exactly what you wanted to say, I think. And but I also noticed at that point that you, when we were in this problem where we had a track that wasn't working, you looked to me like you wanted to press the panic button to call Luke. And I want to ask you, what is it about Luke's production that is so great to you, I guess, and what does he bring as a producer?
Well, I guess being a drummer, I'm impressed by the drums that he programs. Also, like, confused because I have to learn them. But I think that sets Tennyson apart a lot from other electronic music, is like the depth of the percussion and how much time and effort goes into it.
That's, I think, another question I had. So I think, if you don't know, Luke does the production, and then Tess plays the drums that he produces on stage. And I think, Luke, do you ever consider Tess when you're working on your percussion parts? Because they're quite involved and intricate.
Absolutely no regard for my sister.
It's really hard stuff to play, I would guess. And Tess, how do you go about learning that?
Originally, it's just by ear. So Luke will separate the stuff that he wants me to play, which is all the percussion, from everything else. So I can kind of hear the tracks quieter, but mostly hear the drums. And then I have to kind of listen to what I'm hearing, find the sound on the drum kit. There's about 20 different places it can be, and then go like that, which is a really slow and painful process. But we recently, Luke set it up so that there's also sort of like in Ableton sheet music, so I can actually see what note is on what drum.
Like the MIDI clip that you see
Yeah.
there, you look at this stuff, okay.
Makes it a lot easier.
And I think actually, I want to play some of this music so you can hear some of the painful drums that Tess has to learn from Luke. But my anecdote about Luke was, I think he was in our office last year, and I was asking him what he does when he's on the tour bus. Does he work on music or things like this? And he told me, and I thought he was joking, but he said that he likes to solve Rubik's Cubes blindfolded. And then I saw that they were actually doing this, and that told me a little bit about the brain that is crafting these really intricate rhythms and things like this. So maybe we could listen to a little sample of something I have here from one of your songs. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this, but this is one called All Yours, and I just want to play one part of it. There's so much going on in this. There's so many different samples. And when I heard the baby sneeze, I was just like, this is crazy. But there's not just that. When you look at the SoundCloud page, there's tons of comments there. And this is where I learned that there's references in there that I would never get. People are I guess, RuneScape samples and things like this. And where do you get all these samples and different things?
The RuneScape ones are from...
RuneScape?
Yeah, they're from RuneScape, but they're impossible to get from the game itself. And some Russian forum figured it out. Took me a couple of days to find it, but everyone's like freaking out in Russian. And I downloaded it. It's like 6,000 tiny sound effects, all made by the same guy. He did the music for the game as well. I think he's unsung hero.
And you spend a lot of your time digging in strange places on the internet to find this stuff. So, like, how many samples are in a typical song that you do?
I don't know. I try not to make too many references. It's more like practical use of RuneScape sound effects.
Does it fit the music that you were working on? And I think you told me, I think at one point that you hate producing. Is that still true? Or?
Did I say it like that?
I mean, I guess the intricate details of what of how difficult it is, I guess.
Yeah. I saw a few videos recently of authors talking about how difficult it is to sit down to write. Not really the writing part. There's a quote, I forget who. But I think it's a battle against how much you care about it. So the more you care about it, the more you're working against yourself, because it's the details and self-reflection that holds you back from actually just making a song with ease.
And what does that struggle give you when you're working on a track? Like, how far do you get in a track each day if you're working on something? So
yeah, I write it like a book, so 6 seconds a day is I'm happy with.
6 seconds a day.
Yeah.
And crazy. And that's because of the intricacy of how you're going through each part, or?
I think it's just the lunacy. I could do a song a day if I knew how. I think my fingers could move fast enough, but it's like a learning process to remove the layers of things holding me back.
Amazing. Let me play one other track here now. This is from your new album, and let me get to the part. It's a song called Uh-Oh. I love that part because that wasn't me doing the volume. That's actually in the song. And like, there's this humor in there, but it's also like, like when people were making music for 7-inch records or stuff, you know the medium that it's going to. Is this a conscious process for you to?
That's just cheeky.
Just cheeky.
Yeah, it's a bit gimmicky too, I think, but it's fun.
I liked it. Because it made me engage with the music when I heard it. I thought, I didn't press the volume button on my computer, and I looked and I was like, oh, that's Luke, thanks.
Yeah, I realized yesterday you're in a very powerful situation when you have, 100,000 people with headphones on. It's dangerous. You could do a lot of damage. And I don't, but...
Now I'm worried about what else is in your music, actually.
You could have the whole song 50% volume and then just put a brass stab in there that destroys everyone's lives.
Don't do that.
Diminished.
I think I hope you don't find this offensive, but you also have a high tolerance for cheese in your music, I think, like when you do some of this, and I find that's a compliment, I'd say.
What is cheese?
Cheese, I mean, when you, with your melodies and the things you sample, you're doing things that they're playful. They're bringing people into the song in a different way than just listening to it as music.
Yeah, I think I'm listening to it too deeply, and I get bored with the 6 seconds I'm working on, so I stop when it's interesting. Probably go a little overboard once you listen to the whole song. Kind of learning that now, that a song can be 4 minutes and just kind of feel good, and Vol doesn't need to constantly punch you in the face.
I think we talked a little bit about listening to like loop-based music, which is, I think maybe earlier you were into this, but now you're more into the details of the song, I think, rather than a loop. That's sort of a conscious effort, I guess.
Yeah, maybe when I started, that's the only way I knew how was the loop. And I was listening to a lot of like Bonobo, Blockhead, trip hop stuff. It was like drum break based, and then you put on like things that you find on vinyl records. But.
So coming back to Tess, I think another thing that's interesting about the way you guys have grown up is I think a lot of the music you've made from where you are in Canada, I think maybe some of the ways that you've learned music and you've gained popularity wouldn't have been possible. Obviously, I guess SoundCloud is one of the things that has helped you guys get a big following. But for Tess, you also had some lessons with a great drummer, Alphonse Mouzon, who was a great fusion drummer who played with Jaco Pastorius and Weather Report and all these people. So you had Skype lessons with him, and how did this come about?
When we were younger, I think I was probably 9 years old, we were covering Alone in Paris, which is a song by him. And there was a video of me, like as a 10-year-old, playing it in a cafe to no one. And I guess he saw that somehow. Maybe my dad sent it to him and just kept sending it to him until he found it.
No way, that guy just found it.
He just stumbled upon it.
Amazing.
Yeah, and we did Skype lessons just like while he was in California and I was in Canada every week for I think a year.
For a year, okay.
Yeah.
And what did you learn from him?
It was a lot of jazz, obviously. He was funny. I almost got the impression that maybe he didn't know time had passed. Like he thought I was still a 10-year-old. So he would teach me things, but he would like give me these like sentences to remember them. And they were all like swing, like a swing pattern would be I drink the orange juice. And that was like how I was supposed to remember certain patterns on the ride cymbal. It was fun.
Did you ever meet him in person?
I didn't know.
Okay. And he passed away last year, I guess. So, but was a really amazing drummer. So, and so you were 10 at the time. You were already performing. When was your earliest performance for you two?
It depends what you consider a performance. But we were busking on the streets of Edmonton in the summer when I was 7, I think, was the first time we went out.
We did a gig before that. The city we lived in passed a law later that stopped us from doing it, but when we started, we'd play open stage nights at kind of dingy bars with bearded dudes just like get on stage and play Coldplay covers. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I've seen some of these videos. They're pretty amazing.
And we're wearing the over-the-ear headphones to protect our little child ears. Yeah.
And I think a lot of this comes from your father, who was a musician as well, right? And,
yeah.
And when did you start your lessons? When did you start learning instruments? Do you remember even, or is it?
No. I remember my first piano teacher putting a tangerine in my hand. I remember crying just because of that.
What?
Just to get your hand round enough to play the notes. These old moldy tangerines.
I remember going to a piano lesson really young, and at the end of the lesson, my dad was talking to the piano teacher and paying him or whatever, and I was sitting on the piano stool, and it was one of the ones with it's like a drum stool with the screw, and I was spinning around and around and around. It came out the top, and I just slammed on the ground. He got really mad at me. I was scared to go back after that.
Those memories stick a lot more than the scales.
And did you ever feel like you were forced into to learning this stuff, or did you enjoy it from that age?
I think there was a time once, my parents didn't force me into a lot of things, but there was one time they had to carry me into piano lesson.
Not like uncomfortably forced, but firmly encouraged. Like, I remember when I first was being taught the drums by my dad, who's a drummer. I told him I didn't want to play them, and he asked me like very seriously what instrument I wanted to play, because there was no I wasn't allowed to pick none. I had to pick something. And I said the harmonica, and he said, no, that's not happening. He said, get back behind the drum kit. You're not playing harmonica. So.
Careful, there's a lot of harmonica players here.
We did meet one yesterday, yeah. And then so you're playing these cover songs and Coldplay, as you say, and things like this. And when and how did you make the transition into doing more original stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my friend showed me Aphex Twin, And I only knew electronic music as like a, so I was like, nah, dude, no way. I'm not listening to that. And then one day I sat down and really listened to one of the songs. And God, it was like that moment changed everything. I just kind of listened to Oasis and stuff before that. And I had Pro Tools installed on my computer making jazz cover recordings. I was probably 11, 10. I was maybe 11, and I tried to recreate an Aphex Twin song in Pro Tools. It failed pretty bad. I still have the song. I should have loaded it up for you.
Yeah, we should have had that here next time. And then how long until your first album came out from there?
I worked on some songs for 3 or 4 years, and then I did a real full-length record. It was probably 12, and it had a boat on the cover, and we made physical copies and got the jewel cases and the stuff printed separately to save money. I put them all together, did a CD release party in our hometown.
There was a really intense track on that album. It was like he used a sample of like a fax machine breaking. It was very intense. And we used to sell those CDs at our jazz shows, along with jazz CDs.
At a Jewish retirement home.
So we sold out of the jazz CDs, and there was a whole table of very elderly people who still wanted to buy CDs. And maybe we're going to hell for this, but we sold them all the electronic music. And who knows what happened when they heard that one song. Just crashed their cars.
You didn't do any like spiking of volume or anything like this to hurt their ears? No, I guess not. So.
Naturally.
And I guess so. Out of Edmonton, you had something like, I guess what I would call sort of high-profile people who heard your music, and this all came through SoundCloud, or was there another place? Or
Yeah, SoundCloud, Mr. Carmack, Ryan Hemsworth, Lindsay Lohan, and
really?
Skrillex.
later on. But yeah, I think originally, I'm gonna say it wrong, Jemba Jemba, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he reposted one of my songs. I think that's what created the initial cascade of reposts.
And is this the only place where you need to release stuff now, on SoundCloud or Bandcamp or?
I like to think that SoundCloud is taking a recent dip in engagement, or my songs are getting worse. I don't know. One of the two.
So maybe we can take a moment actually and dig into one of your songs here. So what we're going to do is look into how Luke takes a song and turns it into something that Tess can play, and then we're going to look into their live set because it's a really interesting one, and then you'll know sort of the setup for how things work, and they're going to perform after that. So, but let's take a look into
The Zone.
Into the Zone, yes. So. Do you want to take over here, actually? Why don't we switch places?
All right. I'm going to approach this with all of the preparation I did for the order. This is the original project file for one of our songs. And
So how many tracks are in there?
Not too many, just 184. So, it's a slowed down Caribou song that I stole stuff from. So this is the backing track for everything that we can't play when we're on stage. So there's some bass lines, extra percussion stuff, and that just forms itself as I slowly mute everything that we can play. And then here is a drum rack of what Tess is playing in this section. And the way this comes about is, this is the drum rack for Tess, and here is her kick drum, and here's all of her kick drums for the song. and they're on a chain selector, and as the song plays, it switches between, how do you do, oh yeah, Command, click, Alt, click, Control, click. So here is, if I can expand it, the mapping for Tessa's kick drums. So as it plays, as she's just playing, but it's kind of cycling through all the sounds, and those come from the project file up here, and I just bounce out audio for the kick drums and put them onto the rack.
So this was kind of a revelation for me, is that when you're performing your set, you've got one track that's got a drum rack for each song that you're doing, and you're automating it, as the song, you move to different songs, it changes the drum rack with automation. But then within each drum rack, in each song, there's the samples that Tessa's playing are changing the whole time.
Yeah, it's super fun.
So you're working with like variable sound. You're just hitting, you don't even know what you're hitting in some ways, I guess, or is it?
Yeah, actually, the most difficult part about learning something is when I hear 7 sounds in a row, and I pause it, and I hit everything, and I don't hear any of them. And I say, Luke, you don't put any of these sounds on the kit? And he said, no, play it back, and while you're playing it back, just spam the snare drum. And I play it back, spam the snare drum. Oh, there they are, in 2 seconds. I just completely missed them because it's completely automated.
Crazy. And how many electric drums are you hitting here? So you've got like, how many, you've got all these variable pads basically that play.
Yeah,
it.
let's see, it's 8, and then 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 in total.
24 variable pads that are all playing different sounds at different times as the songs go on, I guess.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
So here I just consolidated the MIDI for her entire part. My part's up here.
And the same thing's going on with your keyboard parts.
Yeah, so my keyboard part is the same setup. Here's all the sounds, and as it runs, it goes through all those sounds, and yeah. It's not perfectly set up on this project file, but if I go over to my setup over there, it'll be a...
So now you've gone and you've taken all without considering Tess at all, you've made all these complicated drum parts, and you take them from here, you put them down into a drum rack, and then this joins into a larger file that's your entire live set. Mm-hmm. And maybe we should go over and check this out now.
Definitely. So here's a solo that I played on a keyboard at home, and I just transcribed it by hand. And then that's what I used to learn it. I haven't learned the left hand yet, though. I haven't been home long enough, so I just play the right hand.
Wait, seriously?
Mm-hmm.
I learned the whole thing. The jazz part on the the drum part in that jazz section is without a doubt the hardest part of any Tennyson song I've ever had to learn.
Are they getting harder?
Oh, definitely. But learning them is getting easier.
Do you think he's doing it intentionally to you?
I think he's just getting better, but my memory is getting better too. It used to be I would learn an entire section, and then the next day I'd forget it all, and I would just cry. Sit down at the drum kit and cry. But now it's getting retained a lot better.
Do you ever have to have notes with you to memorize all this stuff? Or?
No, I have, it's weird, but I have like pictures in my head that kind of are like an unintentional memory technique. There's only one that I ever wrote down, so it's the one that I always like reference, but in the song XYZ, it's basically like every bar is like a different personality of a person, and they're all wearing different clothes. So it'd be like a woman in a red dress, and then like a police officer, and then like a popular girl in high school. And it doesn't make any sense, but it helps me remember. because it's like everything just feels different. You talk to them differently or something. I don't know.
So here, I don't know if this is, yeah, you can hear me.
So let's maybe walk through your setup real quick, what you've got here. So
So it's a bit of a weird thing with one shots, but they all overlap. So
you've got 16 pads here, and these are also all changing as the song progresses as well.
if I can pull up there's a lot of weird lists of. Here's the list of automation for just this machine here. If I pull up one, here's the chain selector for the songs. So if I switch to anything in the. And then, yeah, that's that.
I guess I'm not going to worry about putting too much work into my live set anymore, I think.
Tessa's kit is the same. Here's the list of stuff for Tessa's kit. So things like.
I mean, what's really cool here is there's so much preparation that goes into this, but then once you're playing on stage, you're just playing, and the audience doesn't have to see you get into all this kind of gory details of your live set.
There's a point where like you could automate the note on, and you could just play the rhythm of the melody on one key, and then you could play, the whole song doing this. So I'm trying to balance how much I can possibly do with how good it should sound.
And you showed me that you even have things like with Tessa's ride cymbals and things like this. You've got different cymbal samples coming in.
That should work there. Ride cymbal.
It's different on every song. I never know where the ride cymbal is.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty normal setup for the. Oh, wait 1 second. Here's all of the ride sounds, kind of in order. And then set up on 2 velocities, or 3, I think, actually. And then a noise LFO to swap between them.
So you've got a random sample going to randomly select different ride samples as she hits the pad over there. Which gives it a real variety and human life to it. And what's this plugin you have up on top here?
This is this guy.
So you've got a monom over here.
I just run. Sort of stuff like that. Anything that loops, I run on there.
It's like an MLR kind of sampler you've got there.
And then we both have one of these guys.
And then what's going on the tracks here? So you've got things like, you've got some samples that are playing here that are the backing parts that you're not playing. You've got a click track. You've got the keyboard parts, which are changing as each song goes by. And of course, we didn't even mention yet that this is all in arrangement view, which is probably a little surprising to some people, but really a cool way to set up your performance.
Another thing I'm doing, which I like, is I'm running 3 versions of Massive, and then running set lists of the sounds inside, and using a program MIDI change, so little MIDI clips at the beginning, like this one here. And this has the program change down here.
Is there ever a point where it gets too automated for you, or is this a balance you have to work with?
There's just parts where I feel a little more guilty than other parts of the song. Especially the older ones. The older ones have a nice thick backing track. And then the new ones are a bit more scarce. Like this one. Compared to an old one, which would be like... Actually, no, that's some old loops, old loopers running. I'm not that bad.
So you're actually trying to do more and more live as you go on with new compositions.
Yeah, and it's been difficult. The last song I spent, I guess, 2 weeks at home learning it. It's this one. So the patterns that make no sense. There's one point where I think I saturated my brain with the memory of all the other parts that I could not learn. It's like a little piano part. Yeah, you're right. Could not learn it. That one took me 3 days. I couldn't put it in.
Awesome. And then the bottom, you've got these further layer clips which are running to Resolume to show your
Yeah, so these are the lighting automation, which we didn't bring today. And so each one has, I'll expand them out. This is just one track, but here's I had to do this myself. One controls each layer, and then this is hue, saturation, opacity on each one. And it's triggering, I guess I could show it.
Yeah.
Without the actual lights here.
So normally in their live set, they've also got lights that are going with this, but they use some video clips going over here as well.
So here's the preview for what it sends. It's 64 LED strips. So it doesn't look quite like this, but this is the backing track.
Cool, awesome. So I think at this point we're going to let you guys perform, and we'll see how all of this works in practice.
Thanks a lot. I have to get back into show mode, where I pretend to be confident. Let's skip. What are we skipping? Okay. Set change. Look into your eyes, I can't find you. I don't know what happened to the girl I know. When there was a light that would shine through, nothing could be wrong when I was here with you. We can bring the days back that we miss. Why should we keep hurting ourselves like this? How'd we get so lost in same old? Baby, I would rather get lost with you. Yeah! Why don't we escape? Do not leave this all behind. Now it's not too late. I know we could get it right this time. Why can't we escape? Do not leave this all behind. Now it's not too late. There's no way I'm turning back this time. What if all the words were understood? What if all the doubt was gone for good? What if I could bring the world to you? Could you live today like your last view? What if all the words were understood? What if all the doubt was gone for good? What if I could bring the world to you? Could you live today like your last view? Why don't we escape? You and I leave this all behind. Now it's not too late. I know we can get it right this time. Why can't we escape? You and I leave this all behind. Now it's not too late. There's no way I'm turning back this time. Don't you see there's nowhere to run? Don't you see your fate high? Can't you see the damage you've done? Can't you see the fault line? I know that your fate high. Can't you see the fault line? Don't you see there's nowhere to run? Don't you see your faith high? Can't you see the damage you've done? Can't you see the fault line? I know that your faith high. Can't you see the fault line? I know that your faith high. Fault line, fault line. I know that you're late. Can't you see the fault line, fault line? I know that you're late. right.
All right, we have to discuss the set list now. We could do Slippers, or
Yeah.
just skip it to Pegasus Feet, and then do all the really good
Pegasus
ones.
Feet, that's not a song.
Sorry, Pegasus. It's just called Pegasus.
Ready? Which one? Okay. I need some water. Everything's taped together.
When all is gone, a bird from afar, bleeding song of all that we are. If you go, I'm running after you. As it goes, oh, 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 and we go, oh, 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 oh. at these skies, the wind and I close, running back to the start of our song. Crapper, and all the cars and popsicle bags, and thank you for it, with all your best dance, running back to the start of our song. 'Cause it goes, oh, 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 oh. Can we go, oh, 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 oh. Everybody, oh, oh, will it ever be the same again? How much does it take? Will it ever be the same again? Can't you live your life without it? Put it all behind. I'd like to believe that in our life we got it by the first few lines. So what you waiting for? Sure you always talk about it, but your words never show. Don't you know? Hope is not what you're calling. If you're scared to go, got yourself binoculars, looking for a home. Yeah, don't you know you're looking for the mountain that you're on? Got no doubt about it. Don't you know it's fine? Buzzing, now it's complicated. The journey is the home you're looking for.
You can play one more song? This one's called Beautiful World.
It's a beautiful world. Can you see it anymore? Run with your eyes closed, looking for the words I will show. Don't know what it's all for. Afraid to watch it all unfold. What for? Out there, everything's here before. There's more hidden here, everything's there. What for? Out there, everything's here before. There's more hidden here, everything's there. What for? Out there, everything's here before. There's more hidden here, everything's there. calm words spoken by the midnight sea. It can be the full moon, it can be the bird set free, it can be the sure wind burning in the blossom tree. It can be the petals falling on the blushing stream.
It can be a sunrise scattered by frozen air. It can be the ocean held within a single tear. It can be the whole world. You can watch it all unfold, unfold.
What for? Out there, everything's here. Before there's more, it appears everything's there. What for? Out there, everything's here. Before there's more, it appears there. Thank you so much, Luke.
Thank you guys.
It's such an honor to be on stage here and play for everyone. This has been an unforgettable weekend, and we're here for another day, so we'll continue to.
Thank you guys.